Alright guys, we're going to do some notes today on white blood cells. Sorry I'm not here. I may sound a little nasally. Hopefully I'll be back tomorrow. You should have completed your note packet on white blood cells, and we were supposed to start our lab today looking at different slides on the microscope, which you have to draw, label, and that takes quite a while. So make sure that you're doing the work today with this video and then also going to Quizlet and basically memorizing these different types of white blood cells so that when we get to lab on Wednesday that you can do it pretty quickly and be successful at it. So first of all, white blood cells, we also call them leukocytes, and they've got one main function, which is to defend your body against disease or illness, and they work in different ways, and there are 5 different types of cells, but they're all formed from one what we call hematopoietic stem cell. And if we take a look at the graphic organizer, which is from your book, at the top here, this is basically a stem cell which can differentiate down different paths or specialize, and once it becomes specialized, it will become one type of leukocyte. And we can go down here, we can see here the ones that we're kind of studying here, the macrophage, the eosinophil, the basophil, the neutrophil. So we're going to focus on these different white blood cells today here at the bottom. We can say here, also our red blood cell comes in over here, but we're just studying these white blood cells today. This first image is going to be our first white blood cell. What I see first of all looking at this, and you should recognize right away when you look at this picture, is I see several lobes of the nucleus. One, I see 2 here, and I see a third one, and I see them connected. And right away I know that that is a neutrophil. So neutrophils are distinguished by, they have light purple cytoplasmic granules. So if we look in here, all this light area where my cursor is in this picture has little granules in it. But then I see the nucleus, which is dark purple, and it has 2 to 5 lobes. And I see 3 here, 1, 2, 3. And they are connected by these little fibers. About 54 to 62% of your white blood cells, or leukocytes, are going to be these neutrophils, and their job is to go through phagocytosis, which when you complete these notes today, please go into Schoology and watch a note on how that happens. But the definition of phagocytosis is just how this cell basically engulfs or eats and then digests bacteria or pathogens or viruses that invade the body. The next type of white blood cell that we're going to talk about is the eosinophil. And here, right away when I see this, when I look down at this picture, notice the cytoplasm in these granules are a lot darker than the neutrophil. So all these little granules in here are very dark compared to the neutrophil. And I see 2 distinct lobes. That's going to tell you right away that we're talking about an eosinophil. So they have these coarse red granules in here. And we can clearly see that that is different than the neutrophil that we saw before. It's bilobed, bi meaning 2. So here's our 2-lobe nucleus, 1, 2. We can see that it's connected here by a thin fiber. And they comprise only 1 to 3% of our white blood cells. Their job is to moderate allergic reactions. So they're going to defend against parasitic infections, and they're going to basically lower the reaction to allergens in the air, on our body. Our next type of white blood cell or leukocyte is going to be our basophil. So these have a few coarse deep blue granules. Here, very, very dark granules in here, dark color. There's an S or U-shaped nucleus that's basically hidden by these granules. And if we look closely, my cursor here is going to try and transfer or show you. If I had a pen, I could color it in. But if I go around here and up and around, I can kind of see the nucleus is going to be a U-shaped. And I'm following that U shape here, but it's hidden by all the granules that are showing up, those dark dots. So here's my U, sometimes it's an S-shaped nucleus. These comprise of less than 1% of our white blood cells, and their job is to migrate to damaged tissues, and what they're going to do is they release histamine, and histamine is released in my body now. It causes inflammation. So we're going to have a buildup there of fluids, and it's going to hopefully fight infection. It's going to try and contain an infection, and then we'll have some neutrophils come in and hopefully go through phagocytosis. They also release heparin on the site. Okay, so when they come to a site, when they're trying to fight infection, not only do they release histamine, which causes fluid buildup and inflammation, they release heparin, which inhibits the blood from clotting. We'll get into that a little bit more. Our fourth type here then is a monocyte, and right away, let's look at the nucleus, and I do see a U shape, but I don't see a bunch of granules that are hiding this nucleus like previous. So these are our largest white blood cell, and they have the clear cytoplasm, so we don't see any granules here. And that's our clear giveaway that this is going to be a monocyte. Their nucleus can be a lot of different shapes. Okay, this one happens to be a U shape. They take on a lot of different shapes, but our telltale sign is that I really don't see any granules here. Okay, they comprise 3 to 9% of our white blood cells or leukocytes, and their function again is phagocytosis, just like our neutrophils. So they engulf large particles. And again, you should be watching the video in Schoology about phagocytosis. It's short. It's how basically these molecules go in, engulf, basically digest and recycle bacteria, viruses, that sort of thing. They can become macrophages. Macrophages are really, really large bacteria-eating defense mechanisms of our immune system, and we'll talk about that later. Our last type is called a lymphocyte, and our lymphocytes have a thin rim of clear cytoplasm. So if we look at our nucleus, we don't see much cytoplasm compared if we go back to our last picture. There isn't much cytoplasm here, but we do see a clear cytoplasm, like a halo hanging out here. Our nucleus is huge, and it is round, so we don't see any weird shapes compared to our last one. It can be varied shapes. When we look at the last one, if I go back really quick, our monocytes, this nucleus can take very, very many shapes, and it has a lot more cytoplasm. When we're looking at a lymphocyte, this nucleus is traditionally round, and we just see a very thin halo of that cytoplasm. Okay. These comprise of 25 to 33% of our white blood cells or leukocytes, and their job is in immune responses. So they're the ones who are producing antibodies. So once you come in exposure with, let's say, chickenpox, they recognize it and they put out these antibodies in your blood. And they say, if you're ever exposed to this again, we're going to recognize it and you're not going to get sick. So they're the ones who are responsible for building up your immune system so that you don't get sick twice. I'm going to sneeze. So you don't get sick twice with the same infection, hopefully. Okay. Overall, your white blood cell counts are between 5,000 and 10,000 cells per millimeter, or per cubic millimeter. Now, when we look back on our red blood cells, remember, this was around 4.6 million when we talked about males. So there are a lot fewer white blood cells. And you have differential white blood cell counts based upon what's going on in your body. Are you currently fighting an infection? If so, we're going to find differential white blood cell counts. It's going to help us to pinpoint the nature of your illness. And is it caused by bacteria or viruses? We can narrow that down. We can get your blood work and go through this. When you have blood work done and we're trying to pinpoint infection, what they do is they try to break out each of the 5 different types of white blood cells by percentage and say, do they fall in that range that we suspect them to be? So we can go back and say, if we're talking about real quickly here, our lymphocytes, they should fall within this 25 to 33% range. If not, you are probably exposed to some type of illness that your body is ramping up its antibody production. And so we are able to look at each one of these 5 white blood cells by percentage in your blood sample and break down the nature of your illness, pinpoint the infection, and also how to treat it. Right. We're going to end the notes here. Please go to Schoology and watch the video on phagocytosis, which is engulfing and destruction of pathogens. And then use your time to study up on the white blood cells, use the Quizlet that's there, and then we will start lab on Wednesday. You must be ready to go. The more you know, the faster it will go. Make sure to bring your colored pencils in and be ready to go on microscopes. I will see you soon.